Hello, my name is Aaron Roney, and this video will already be different than probably any of the other videos that I do from here on out for this show that my brother and I are doing. First of all, I'm wearing a suit because I have a performance tonight. Second of all, I'm doing this video in my office because I don't have time to do it tonight because I will be driving straight into Seattle. A little bit about myself. We're doing videos on theism and atheism. I am the resident atheist. I'm married, I live in Seattle, and I do nerd things for work. So that's enough about me. Our first topic is about the question of where the burden of proof lies. That is to say, when you're having discussion between the existence of a supreme being or the lack thereof, who bears the burden of evidence? Now, I'm on the side that theists bear the burden of evidence. My brother Jacob will most likely, although I forgot to say the format. The format is we each make a 10-minute intro arguments that we don't get to see from each other, and then we'll make rebuttal arguments, maybe one or two rebuttal videos after each. And the purpose of this is to try to inform people on both sides of the spectrum what it's like to be an atheist, and maybe we're not the spawn of Satan. And, from the other side, not all theists agree with all parts of the Bible, not all theists interpret the Bible the same way, and we'll say the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or what have you. Obviously, I'm most familiar with the Abrahamic religions, having lived in the United States. But it will mostly be about the differences between the two sides so that people can understand where atheists are coming from, where theists are coming from, so on and so forth. So there won't really be any winner, but we are going to discuss these topics, hopefully civilly, so that people can get an idea of what's going through our heads. So, to start off, we are answering the question, where does the burden of proof lie? And I will say that it lies with the theists. My brother will say that it lies with those making any assertion. So I'm going to start off my argument with a courtroom. Let's say you or anyone is on trial for, let's say, stealing. Or we could say a murder. It doesn't matter. When you go to trial, you are pleading innocent, but whose job is it to prove that you're guilty? Do you have to prove that you're innocent, or does someone have to prove that you're guilty? Now, my brother would say that since you're making the assertion, you are stating that you are innocent, you must provide evidence that you are innocent. That's what he will apply to the argument of who bears the burden of proof. Now, the problem with this is that there's always a null hypothesis. And in scientific research, the null hypothesis is the position that two phenomena are not correlated. For example, dropping an object and it falling towards the earth is not correlated to my mass or the object's mass and the Earth's mass and the distance between them. Or saber-toothed tigers and tigers of today are not correlated by evolution. Or drug A is not correlated to curing problem or illness B. So the issue there is that there's always the null hypothesis that two phenomena are not correlated. The issue that arises in a courtroom, and my argument here, is that in a courtroom, the position of innocence is the argument that you and the event, you, the person being accused, and the event, let's say murdering someone, are not correlated. The null hypothesis is that you are not correlated. Now, you may have an alibi that will help you get off even quicker, and then maybe it won't even go to court, let's say. So you could say, here's a video of me at Best Buy buying a HDMI cable and at the exact time of the murder, therefore I should be acquitted. Now, that's great. That can help you get off quicker. But let's say you don't have that evidence. Let's say you were sitting in a black box with no video of you whatsoever. Where is your proof that you're innocent? My brother would say that since you made the assertion that you're innocent, you have to show the proof of it. I would say that the null hypothesis is that you are innocent. You are not correlated with the murder. It is up to the person making the assertion that you are guilty of the crime, that there is enough evidence to correlate you with the murder. This is my position on why theists, those who believe in a supreme being, bear the burden of proof. Now, I'm an agnostic atheist. That means that I don't know for certain, but I lack belief in God. And it's because I don't know for certain and I lack the evidence. The null hypothesis on a supreme being existing or not existing is non-existence. That this universe, this world, this paper, my broken phone, my office, the planets, the galaxy, the universe, the null hypothesis is that this universe is not correlated with a supreme being. And we won't get into how we define that supreme being, whether it's benevolent or omniscient, etc. We may have other discussions on that. But my argument lies in the fact that when you make the assertion that this universe is correlated with such a being, it is now up to you. You now bear the burden of proof to show evidence to support your assertion. If I walk up to you, this is the famous Russell's teapot, which doesn't have as good of a ringing true of today since we actually can take pictures of Mars, but Russell said, if I walk up to you and claim that there's a teapot rotating around Mars, right, you would say, show me the evidence. The null hypothesis is that the teapot and Mars are not correlated. There is no teapot there. But if you say, there is no teapot there, or I don't think there's a teapot there, or I don't think there's a God, is it up to you to prove that there's no teapot? Is it up to you to prove that there's no flying pink unicorn that rotates around Saturn? Is it up to you to prove that there's no flying spaghetti monster? No. If someone walks up to you and makes an assertion, it is up to them to support their assertion. And that means the assertion beyond the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is there is no teapot. There is no flying unicorn. There are no fairies. There is no God. There is no Lucky Charms guy at the end of a rainbow. So the argument here is that the burden of proof lies on those making the assertion above the null hypothesis, where the null hypothesis is the state in which it could be the case and we would never know. So here's the thing. In this courtroom, if your knowledge goes to infinity, right? As your knowledge goes to infinity in a courtroom, if you committed the murder, we will eventually, one day, find evidence that you committed the murder. But you could have not committed the murder and been in a black box that holds your energy in and had no effect on the universe outside of it. You could have been in a box like that and there's no evidence that you didn't commit the murder, and yet it's still true. The same holds true with God. As our evidence moves to infinity, now lots of religions define God as unknowable, so that's besides the point. But if our intelligence moves to infinity, one day we will find the evidence to show that God exists, if he does. One day we will find the evidence to show that you committed the murder when we find the one atom that you left at the scene. One day we will find the evidence that God had an impact on this universe. But if God had no impact, we could bring our intelligence to infinity and still not prove that he was never there. So the null hypothesis is that he is not correlated with this universe. And that when you make an assertion that he is correlated with this universe, you must back it up with evidence. So, my question to Jacob, I haven't seen his introductory arguments yet though, my question to him is, are all assertions required to show evidence? Or are just those assertions that are beyond the null hypothesis required to show evidence? And in my opinion, only assertions above the null hypothesis are required to show evidence. Until you show me that evidence, I will stay on the null hypothesis that medicine A doesn't cure disease B. There is no flying teapot rotating around Mars. Until you show me that evidence, then I will become a believer that this medicine works, that the teapot exists, that God exists. One argument that's often made is that this has to do with Occam's razor, that the simplest solution is always correct. In my opinion, this doesn't. It's that the simplest solution is correct. The null hypothesis is correct until you show evidence to prove the assertion or a more complex hypothesis. What this really rings true to is what's called Hitchens' razor, based off of a famous quote by Christopher Hitchens. He said, "That which can be asserted without evidence may be easily dismissed without evidence." Right? When you walk up to me and say that you have a Super Bowl ring from winning a Super Bowl, I will say, until you show me your ring, I'm not going to really believe you. So assertions that aren't supported by evidence are easily dismissed without evidence. And I make no assertion. My assertion is that the null hypothesis that God doesn't exist is the state that I'm in until I find that evidence that I need. I hope you enjoyed my information. I hope you'll enjoy Jacob's information, and hopefully we'll catch you for some of the rebuttal arguments, and hopefully you'll watch some arguments in the future. Thanks a lot.